Sparker Agency versus Leela Patel. Right, so it's Spark Agency, the ID that has been hyped up the most of the three in the big box that's upcoming. Here's my take on the Spark Agency, and it's not too different from what people have been suggesting over at StimHack. It's basically a tax you out deck, a deck that strives to make the runner as poor as possible, to force them to spend extra clicks to get their rig going, which in turn allows you to take better advantage of some of the tools that are available in the card pool. Toll Booth is a money it's a money sucker. Let's not make a mistake about it. It's an awesome piece of ice. Almost every runner has to pay 3 credits to get past it every time, and that combos very well with Ash, another card that shines so well when the runner is poor. When they are poor, they don't want to beat the trace, and if they're trashing the Ash, you're coming out ahead because it means that they have to pass through your remote server one more time. Eat that toll booth, tax one more time, and it adds up. Every time they have to pay 3 credits, it gets worse and worse. You're running lots of assets like paid campaigns and launch campaigns that drain their money so hard, not just by Spark's ID ability, but also by the trash costs. And if they ever try to get too much of a foothold by setting up lots of resources, I have bad news for you. If you're not going to run my breaking news, I'm going to all-seeing eye you all the way down. All-seeing eye is amazing right now, and what happened on my first turn was that I res a launch campaign before I passed the turn over to him, forcing him to lose 1 credit. This is called click stealing, and it's something that can be done only in Spark. What happens is that the runner starts their first turn on 4 credits instead of 5. So, the most obvious usage of this is to force them to spend 1 more click if they want to play the sure gamble on their first click, because Spark in that situation, Spark doesn't read lose 1 credit for the runner. It basically says lose 1 click. And losing 1 click is huge. If you know how annoying Enhanced Login Protocol is, well, this is equally as annoying for way less cost and influence. This hits not just sure gamble, but lots of expensive resources as well, which I'm seeing lots of play nowadays. Professional context is affected. Wildside is especially affected because you don't want to play Wildside and go down to 1 credit. There's very little you can do from there. Liberator accounts is heavily affected. If clicking for credit and playing Liberator accounts is bad, well, this is worse. If you start on 4 credits, you cannot play your Liberator accounts on your first turn. That's just awful play. However, my opponent counters nicely. Instead of playing Sure Gamble, he plays Visage and KD, loading up KD. He's down to 1 credit and he doesn't trash my launch campaign, but he starts off with a good money engine, and he will continue dripping up in credits as he draws cards, plays his Desperado, and runs my remote. I'm very disappointed. I thought the launch campaign would distract him. He would run the launch campaign before my breaking news, but instead he runs my breaking news. And I really want to score that breaking news, because that would allow me to zap him with All-Seeing Eye, which was in my hand. If I got that off, no Visage for you, no KT for you, you're going to be poor for the rest of the game. Oh man, that would have been perfect if he didn't run, but my opponent is too good for that. He rightfully ran, stole the breaking news, and completely thwarted my strategy. Luckily, I didn't get affected by the Leela bounce, because he ran last click, so I wasn't getting siphoned there. Meanwhile, I'm going to continue setting up. This deck wants to score early breaking news and early Astro scripts, but not early builds. So that was what deterred me from placing the build in my remote, even though he's pretty poor. Also, face checking wraparound is pretty easy. He might have a Corrodor or Special Order in hand. I don't want to risk that, so I'll leave the build in my hand for now. But what I'll do is double ice up HQ, because I'm worried about scoring agendas in the near future. If I'm to score an Astro script later, I want to make sure that my opponent cannot follow it up with a nasty account siphon. He runs my R&D, and I proc Spark once again, bringing him down to 2 credits and gaining 1 more credit from pop-up window. So yes, so far I'm getting the launch campaign off, and I'm going to get a DBS up pretty soon. I believe that's a DBS right there, but I do not res it here because he accessed the top of R&D. I know the top card of the R&D is not an agenda, so I'm just going to leave things as they are. And instead I'm going to install the build finally in the remote. I'm not going to wait too long for an agenda. Now that breaking news or Astro script isn't coming up, I'm going to score that build now. Wraparound, you can't get through, and he installs a HQ interface. I see 15 minutes and a Jackson Howard. I can keep the 15 minutes. He could steal it from using Gang Sign, but I'm okay with that because I can get the 15 minutes back into my into my R&D. But instead, I decide to keep Jackson Howard and score the Bill, putting me up to 2 points. This is not ideal. Again, I'd rather score a Breaking News or Astro in this scenario. But the good thing is, Gang Sign is useless because I have no agendas in hand. He bounces the special offer back into my hand. So this is why I need to double ice up HQ. I cannot allow him to follow up with an account siphon here. I definitely cannot afford that. He trashes Pet Campaign. So definitely he's going for the economic warfare option, or rather denying my money, which is very good because what he doesn't know is that I'm running 3 toll booths. If he lets my pet campaigns all run off and instead chooses to focus on building his rig, I'm going to punish him severely with lots and lots of toll booths. In the meantime, I regain my double ice on HQ and I res the pet campaign preemptively once more, seeing that he's too poor right now to contest my pet campaign. If he runs and trashes my pet campaign here, he'll be down to 0 credits, and that would be a perfect time to score my agenda if I'm going to draw one next turn. He does trash my DBS, so I cannot get agendas on demand that easily. And that also means that every time I find an agenda off R&D, I have to try to score it, because otherwise it will be vulnerable to gang sign. Yeah, because the thing against gang sign decks is that you cannot have more than one agenda in your hand at any one time. Otherwise, when you try to score one of them, all the rest will get eaten up by Leela, and you don't want that to happen. So he installs the cloak here and reveals to me the kind of strategy he's running, namely stealth rig. So immediately I know what kind of ice in my deck is useful, what is not. Toll Booth is still useful. Refractor deals with Toll Booth particularly well because you only require 1 stealth credit, but I still don't mind Toll Booth because the main attraction of Toll Booth is the on encounter minus 3 credits. That's the main thing. Archer is in my deck, and Archer is way less effective. In fact, the ice sitting on HQ right now is an Archer, I think. Or is it a wraparound? I forgot. Either way, Archer is incredibly useful until he finds his Switchblade and Double Silencer. That would not be good. Alright, so I draw into my other form of tag punishment, the closed accounts. I still haven't found the Breaking News. Breaking News is pretty much my only means of tagging the runner. Yeah, so it's meant to punish slow runners. Here I play interns to recur a pet campaign. Now, interns is not as good as add blitz, and here I really wish I add blitz instead. That would allow me to get back launch campaign and 2 pet campaigns, lots of stuff. Add blitz would have been way better here, but the main reason I'm playing interns over add blitz is it is more useful against noise. Against noise, what noise does is to mill agendas into your archives. So instead of using Jackson Howard to prevent noise from stealing the agendas, what you can do is use interns to convert what's supposed to be their agendas into your agendas. Interns an agenda behind your wraparound in your Ash server, they can't steal it, and now you score it. So I take interns as a form of fast track against noise, and it is useful in that regard. Of course, it's worse against most other matchups. Like in this matchup, I prefer having add blitz instead. But it doesn't matter, he's still letting my pet campaign run. So yeah, because he just simply cannot afford to trash every single one of my pet campaigns again and again. When I played the interns, he decided that was the last straw. He was gonna let me have the pet campaign, but at a cost. He plays security testing, and now my pet campaign is not that good. It's basically 3 free credits for him per click, per turn, from now on. So here I draw into an Astro Script and an Archer. I could slot the Astro Script into the remote, and that's exactly what I do, but before I do that, I make sure that I have double ice on HQ. I place the Archer on HQ, that was the Archer that I was talking about, and then proceed to Astro Script in the remote. I'm pretty sure I can defend this unless he has some way to deal with Toll Booth easily, like an inside job. Yep, and even then that will cost him way too many credits. I don't think he'll be able to beat the Ash Trace from there. So let's see what he does here. This is going to be a tricky and key turn for him. If he cannot deny my Astro Script, I'm halfway towards victory, and the fast advance is turned on, which is always something you have to be concerned against NBN. He runs my Toll Booth after installing a Refractor. He has to count his lucky stars, and that's a Toll Booth and not an Archer, because an Archer would have ended his game here. So after running through my server, he's on 3 credits and I'm on 0. I fire the base trace. Yep, and since he's on 3 credits, he decides not to beat the trace, instead trashing the Ash, the second Ash this game, I believe. Alright, so I have 1 credit, I cannot score the Astro Script. What can I do here? I have a third Ash in hand, that is definitely going to the remote to prevent him from stealing the Astro next turn. I also place a pop-up window on the pet campaign, because I'm pretty sure he wants to trash my pet campaign in time to come. Also, if I find more pop-ups, I can place one on archives to close off security testing. Never underestimate the power of security testing. It's a KD Jones on steroids. It's incredibly effective. He's on 4 credits now. It's really good for him. I res a pop-up, force him to lose 1 credit, I gain 1 credit, but he still trashes my pet campaign, which is pretty annoying. But at least I have an alternative remote setup now, in case I want to place my launch campaign that I just drew into. But of course, the main priority here is to score the Astro. So after some thought, I finally advance my Astro and bring myself down to 0 credits. This is a vulnerable position, but I think it is the right move. This means that I cannot res any eyes on HQ, but that should be fine because he cannot siphon me either. So it should be a win both ways for me. Alright, so now he just continues building up, and this basically forces me to build up for my next turn, which is fine because I have both the Astro Bar and the Daily Business Show ready to go. Of course, he can run my hand and see cards, which is pretty awful. But I find a second Astro here, and I'm definitely going to try to score that next turn. So, how will I do that? I'm just going to click for credits and prepare my Astro Bar. Let's see what he does about this. He has 6 credits on KT, 6 credits in his pool. He is richer than me, but that's fine, because as long as he doesn't do anything funny this turn, I'll be able to score the Astro next turn and be in a commanding position to take over the game. So he's security testings right here. Let's see what he does. I still cannot threaten the Archer res on HQ, which is a problem. I'm too poor, but he goes for my remote instead. And when you force the runner to play the remote game as NBN, you're always coming out ahead. I do not preemptively res the launch campaign here. I could have, but right now my credits are more valuable than his credits. We are past the early game stage of preemptively resing advertisements. After the early game, corp credits are more valuable than runner credits. You notice that he's way richer than me now. He has a 9 loaded KD. I did not manage to get All-Seeing Eye off at all. So now he's pulling away from me. This will happen most of the time, and what you should do is to try to solidify your credit base and get things going, like a pop-up window on your remote, so you can have a steady pet campaign or Astro Bar going. Force them to run your remote so that you'll get rich no matter what. So that's exactly what I'm doing, and here he just continuously hits my hand because he knows that if I score another 2-1 or 3-2, it's game over, and I can easily do that next turn. With HQ interface, he's making the right call, but obviously I'm not too worried about it because having maintained only 1 agenda in my hand the entire time, there's nothing that I have to be worried about. But what I am worried about, however, is the fact that he did access an Archer while making a HQ run. I didn't want him to do that. Archer is my ace up my sleeve. I could easily wreck his entire rig if he face plants into 1. But now that he has seen it, he can play slowly until he finds a Fairy or Switchblade with a stealth counter. His last click is run R&D to make sure I don't top deck a winning agenda, and he does that exactly right. He made the right play of running R&D, but made the wrong play of stealing the NAPD. Stealing the NAPD means that I can potentially top deck a Bill, Astro, or 2-1 agenda to win the game. If I get the NAPD, I wouldn't win the game outright. I could slot the NAPD into the remote and potentially force him to run my remote, but I think that's more preferable for him, that I slot the NAPD into the remote, because he can still contest my remote, he can still check my hand with HQ interface. But what he needs to do now is to lock my R&D. Locking means making sure that my mandatory draw does not cover, has no chance of finding my winning agenda. Alright, so he installs Switchblade here, knowing that I have an Archer somewhere on the board or in my hand. Again, his main goal here should be to lock R&D. he needs to make sure that I do not find any agendas. That is what you have to do if you have no clock in your deck and your opponent has an Astro token on match point. So with 2 clicks left, he has to run R&D. And this is where NBN really shines. If you can force your opponent to do stuff, suboptimal stuff, like running every turn to check your remote or running every turn to check your R&D, you are coming out ahead. So I'm forcing him to run my remote and my R&D here. Unluckily, R&D does not turn up any agendas. All I get are 2 advertisements. The advertisements are just as annoying for me as they are for him. I take 1 click to mandatory draw because if I draw a 2-1 agenda, I would win. But I don't. Instead, I draw a 3-2 agenda, Project Bill. This is a problem. Now, if he runs my hand, I still can't rest the archer, but he will find the 3-2 agenda. Alright, I've baited him to running my remote once again, so I'm now up to 4 credits. So now I can rest the archer if I want. So that's fine. I've managed to distract him once again. If you can force the opponent to play into your remotes, you're coming out ahead because you're forcing them to play through pop-up window and toll booth. You are coming out ahead. So he's forced to run it to make sure, to keep me honest, make sure it's not an NEPD. Turns out it's a pet campaign. So this is a waste of time for him. And this is 1 less click he has to run my hand and find the bill. If he does not find the bill, I win next turn, obviously. So what is his plan now? He has to run R&D once more to lock R&D and make sure that I don't top deck any agendas. And he makes the right play here. He plays R&D-I to counter my daily business show. So he sees 2 cards, I see 2 cards. Of course, I don't rest the outermost ice here. I mean, I could. It's a special offer, I think. I have no need to res it. Here he sees 2 cards, the launch campaign and the Astro script. He should not have trashed the launch campaign. As I said, his main goal is to deny me agendas. Trashing Astro Bar means that I get to see 1 more card from DBS and that gives me a higher chance of winning. In this game it didn't matter because I already had a winning deal in hand, but that was not the right play. Stealing the Astro script breaks the R&D lock, but he has no choice but to steal it there, so that's a different story. In any case, yeah, I scored the final bill to win. So one question that I have to ask myself, how did I manage to win the game against Leela Patel, which is supposed to be a weak matchup given that I'm scoring my agendas last click and given that I'm NBN running lots of agendas? Well, firstly, I didn't have to deal with the weakness that I usually do facing up against Anarchs and Shapers, and that is defending R&D. I practically no defense on R&D for the entire of the game, just a lowly pop-up window. But that deterred my opponent so much from running, and that could have been his downfall. The fact that he allowed me to get away with icing R&D, spending 0 credits to defend R&D, just a pop-up window. Of course, I think if his R&D-I had turned up earlier, game could have been a different story. But the thing is, I couldn't afford to protect R&D. I had to focus on HQ Ice to neuter the Leela bounce as well as the threat of account siphon. Those were some very valid threats that I had to deal with. Even though I have tag punishment in my deck, he can easily clear tags, and I do not want him to gain a credit lead because that will make it so much easier for him to hammer R&D, which is counterproductive. Another reason why my Leela matchup isn't so awful is because I'm not near Earth Hub. Near Earth Hub always has additional draws to draw past R&D lock, usually a good thing, not against Leela, because gang sign Leela for that matter, because my HQ will then become flooded with agendas if I'm playing near Earth Hub, and that will leave me vulnerable to gang sign. Again, this wasn't the case because I never had more than 1 agenda in my hand throughout the entire of the game. Gang sign was never a problem for me. I'm also not completely reliant on fast advance. This deck usually scores out via never advance. There are no fast advance mechanisms except for the 1 biotic label that turned up at the end. You can chain Astro scripts whenever you want to, but with Clot out, you have to have a secondary plan, and I think never advance is a very good plan, especially in NBN. So what happens is you place a toll booth on an Ash, and you begin chucking agendas in there. If they check it, they lose tempo. If they don't, you score agendas. Win-win situation for you. And in this game, I definitely could have single advanced my agendas in my remote if I wanted to. This game I couldn't because he was always able to threaten a remote run. I was always afraid that he could just unload KT and dump all his credits into my remote and score my agenda, which is not something that you want Dealer to do. Okay. I also have anti-tank mechanisms, unlike most fast probiotics decks, which is very nice. Makes him think twice about playing Account Siphon blindly or not. So that's always very nice. Here, this is the slide that I showed you earlier on click stealing. This game, click stealing wasn't very relevant. Going back to the first turn, if you remember, he played Visage followed by KD Jones, both of which are not very good for click stealing. They only cost 2 to install, and they recuperate his credit base very quickly. So yeah, basically the next few turns he just drew cards every turn to fuel baby, and hit KD every turn, unloaded it at the end, and Desperado also allowed him to get lots of credits quickly. So Spark wasn't exactly very effective against Dealer, but it did slow him down enough to give me that little edge that I needed to win the game, and that was always very nice. So that's all I have. Thanks for watching. Spark is a pretty nice ID. You should try it sometime. See you around.